Hey everybody, my name's Jordan, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about some things I've done and some of the things I've learned through teaching students and from my teachers about how to learn more while practicing less. So if you're somebody who's found yourself not advancing as much as you like, or you don't have a lot of time to practice, or you feel like you've been doing the same stuff over and over again, I'm going to give you some tips that hopefully you can apply to your own practice. So I'm going to talk about a broad range of things in this video, but the first couple things are about how we understand music. And before we practice, I like to think about it as learning. So practice is just repetition, but learning helps us see things in a new light. So just like when you're doing math equations and you see 4 times 4 is 16, 8 times 8 is 64, you can instantly know these things. And with music, it's kind of the same way. So as you start to see these patterns, just like when you're reading words, you don't read letter by letter. Your brain can put together an entire word in one moment. So I'm going to show you a couple things how this applies to music. The first thing we're going to talk about today is melodic contour. So melodic contour just talks about the patterns that we see in music. Is the melody going up? Is it going down? Are we moving through steps? Are we moving through skips? Is it staying the same note? So throughout all music, we can see these patterns. And what's cool about it, once a pattern's established, the composer or the songwriter is likely to stay on those patterns because it helps the listener and even the performer. We see patterns we can cling on to. So let's look at this piece by Bach, and it's Prelude in C major. And when we're looking at this piece, let's just quickly analyze what's going on here. From where we're starting, do the notes go up or do they go down? So we can see they're going up, but how many times does it go up? We go up 5 notes, and then from there, we go up another 3 notes, which if you notice is just a repetition of the last 3 notes we played. Now let's look at the second half of the measure, and it's the same exact thing that we started with. And if you look at the entire first page of this piece, in fact, 95% of this piece, I would say, there's like 2 measures that divert from it, follow this exact same pattern of we go up, and then we go up a little bit, and then we start the pattern over again. And then we do the same exact pattern with a different series of notes. So this is a perfect example of how melodic contour can help us to learn a piece. So instead of learning like 64 different notes, you can just say, oh look, these 4 measures, the rhythms repeat themselves exactly the same. And this is just a simple tool that we can use to make lots of music. We can take pages and pages of music and condense it into one idea where we can see this reoccurring pattern. The next kind of pattern that I'm going to talk about is called chord analysis. So for this, you're going to have a pretty good understanding of what major triad chords and minor triad chords are. The good news, it's not that complicated, and bonus points if you can learn the 7ths of them. If you have a little bit of an understanding about this, take that and run. If you don't, just go watch some videos, or whenever you're driving passively, doing chords around the house, just listen to some videos or a podcast about chord triads. The concept of it's actually really simple, and once you get the gist of the basics of it, all the rest of them fit right into place. There's a formula for the major triad, formula for the minor triad. We just add a 7th on top of it. It's really not too bad. And the reason why this is important is because especially classical music, well really all music, follows patterns that can be almost precisely predicted by using chord analysis. Alright, so we're going to look at the same piece of music, but this time we're going to do chord analysis. So let's just add in the notes. We have a C, E, G, C, E. And if you know anything about triads, you can see we have a C major chord. Those are the notes of it. And those are the only notes we use in the measure. So you can conclude that the entire first measure of the piece is a C major according to the chord analysis. So let's go ahead and look at the next one. We have a C, D, A, D, F. And just to keep it simple for right now, that's a D minor chord if you take the D, F, A. But the way it's spelled, we have a C in there, which if you go from D to C, there's a 7th in between, which is where we get the 7th chord from. So D, E, F, G, A, B, C is 7 notes away. And since the 7's on the bottom, we actually have to spell it out in a way where it's D minor 7 over C. But to keep things really simple at first, you could actually get away with just knowing that it's a D minor. And then just think there's a C in the bass. For the rest of them, we'll just add them in real quick. You can see how it's pretty complicated looking at first, and it is hard. But once you get the hang of it, you can see these measures as chords. And so when I'm looking at this, I don't read individual notes. So instead of seeing like, say, 12 notes in a measure, I can just see 1 chord. It simplifies it. Just like when we're reading, instead of seeing 20 letters, you see 2 words that spell something that means something. You can see, and I'll highlight them, there's a couple 7th chords here. Don't get afraid of them. It's just something that we're going to have to take our time and learn as we go. So like I said at the beginning of this might seem daunting and overwhelming, but it's something that instead of practicing our instrument, we're learning, and we can use these skills to learn more music. The next thing I want to talk about is called active listening. So a lot of times We listen to music in the car, we put on something in the background while we're doing something. And this is referred to as passive listening, which is awesome. I do this all the time. It's enjoyable for me to listen to music. But with active listening, we're a little bit more insightful about what's going on. If you want to be a good musician, what we input is what we output. If you want to be a great jazz pianist, you got to listen to jazz piano players. If you want to be a great singer, you have to listen to other singers and take things from them. So the first thing we can do in active listening is just listen to the melody. Find the melody of the tune. And you'll know what the melody is because it's just what's easy to sing along to. So just, if you're in your car, if you're in the shower, just hum along to the melody and think about what it's doing. Where are the pauses in the melody? What's the phrasing of the melody like? So this means like, where's the melody rising? Where is it falling? Where does it start? When does it stop? And just by listening to these melodies, you can find patterns in the melodies, and your ear will quickly find the patterns. So the more you practice it, and then when you go to practice your instrument, you'll kind of know how these things go already, especially if you're listening to a song that's something that you want to practice and something that you want to perform. The other thing is tapping along to the rhythm. Us as humans, intrinsically, we have two big instruments built inside of our bodies. We have our voice, we sing. And then we also have rhythm, so we can like clap and stomp our feet and snap our fingers and do things like that. The first one that we were practicing was using our voice to sing. And then the next one is just tapping out the rhythms. Find where the strong beats of the music is that you're listening to. See if you can figure out the time signature, where the downbeat is. You hear like an interesting instrument, whether it's doing something different. See if you can tap along and figure out what the rhythms are. And even if you're not thinking like, oh, quarter note, eighth note, just being able to tap around and replicate it helps a ton in how we recreate music. And if you're looking for some inspiration for different genres, here's some of my favorite artists or soundtracks to listen to when I'm looking for inspiration. And finally, the most important part of this video is how to practice effectively. So this lends itself into the idea, less is more. Quality over quantity, the tortoise and the hare. You've heard all the idioms and the stories, and it's so true when applied. So when we're first learning, we want to be all about speed. We want to do a ton. We want to do as much as possible. In the long run, unfortunately, this isn't always the most effective practice. A couple of reasons are it's going to lead to burnout, but more importantly, it's going to lead to bad habits. You practice a passage of music wrong 20 times in a row. You might have just spent 15 minutes practicing, but you've actually taken several steps backwards because correcting the incorrect practice is going to be harder than just starting from scratch. The expression is not practice makes perfect. It is perfect practice makes perfect. And the best way to do this is just slow down. There is no reason to play anything fast until you're ready to. So when you first learn the measure or whatever, if you like get the music under your hands, you're like, all right, time to speed this up. But that's where the bad practice can come into play, and you can be spending hours and hours and get nowhere. So just slowing down is going to be the most important thing you can do right here, and focusing on precision. And I'll tell you how to speed it up in a second. So one tip is to actually take smaller chunks of music. So instead of playing 4 measures, just break it down to 1 measure. Sometimes instead of playing 1 measure, break it down into 1 or 2 beats. And once you feel really good, and sometimes it's good to even take several days in between. So say I practice something 5 times really slowly. I'm going to make sure I'm eating good. I'm going to make sure I'm resting and getting a good night's sleep. The next day, your brain's repeated all that stuff for you. So you can, and I'll talk more about this stuff later. So now I can go and sit down, and the speed actually comes naturally. And another key here is consistency. So practicing 5 times a week for 10 to 15 minutes. If we're adults, we're busy. If you can just find 5 times a week where you can spend 15 minutes, say that's before work, say that's after work, or maybe your kids just went to bed and you have 15 minutes before you're going to start your nighttime routine. That's the best thing. It's significantly more effective than, say, practicing for 3 hours on a Saturday and then not touching it during the week. Our brains really crave patterns and repetition. So just by doing 15 minutes a day, every night you're going to sleep, and it's repeating these things. And that idea is actually extremely important as well. I read a book recently called Peak Performance, and it talks about athletes and musicians and artists who are at the top of their fields, and sleep is actually the most important aspect for them. So they would opt to train less and sleep more. As long as they're training the way they need to, it's really important to take time away from your instrument to prevent burnout. It's important to be eating well, exercising your body. That looks different for everybody. Just as long as you're like, go around and go for a walk, something to stimulate your brain. And all these things fit together to make sure that our brains are operating at their max capacity. So over practicing can actually take us out of this, just like overtraining can prevent us from training effectively the next day. The book's called Peak Performance. It's awesome, but some of these athletes and musicians sleep for 11 to 12 hours at night because they're doing so much during the day that their body requires that much for recovery. So if you're practicing a lot and wondering why you're not getting results, the first thing I would ask is, what are you eating like? Are you drinking enough water? How's your sleep schedule? And then finally, this might be the most important, is make sure it's fun. Whatever you're playing, especially if music is a hobby for you, if it's something you do professionally like myself, sometimes you have work that you have to do that might not be what your dream thing is, but it's a paycheck. So sometimes you just have to suck it up and do it because it's a job, which is where it becomes kind of dangerous, where your passions become a profession. If you're just doing music as a hobby, whatever you do should be fun. If you have a teacher, express that to them. Hey, I'm not having fun with this. Can we move on to something else? Make sure you're doing music you like. If you like musical theater, don't worry about classical music. If you like pop music, don't worry about classical music. If you like classical music, don't worry about anything else. Just play whatever you want to play. If there's a song that you've been dreaming to play your whole life, just go and do it. Make sure that whatever you're doing is fun and you're finding ways to make it fun for yourself. If you ever feel like music is a chore or that your practice time is something you're dreading and putting off, the chances are you're not having fun with it, and you just need to make a tweak to make sure that it's something you're enjoying. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful. If you have further questions, let me know in the comments. Some of these concepts in this video, I might make full-length videos about because I think they're so important. And if there's anything specific that you guys want to know, let me know in the comments. Like I said, I'd be happy to make videos about different subjects, and I like connecting with you guys. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.